Hello, viewer! If you don't want to be spoiled on ReZero Season 3, click off this video right now. I will be spoiling it in the next, 5 seconds. Please, for the love of God, click off. Okay. During my last Gluttony cut, you can watch that here if you'd like, we view the story through everyone else's perspective of Subaru through their eyes, discluding Gluttony's most popular victim, meaning all of Rem's help to Subaru was solely attributed to Subaru himself. No Rem ever existed to help him, making his achievements that much more extraordinary. Now, with Season 3 having come and gone, Gluttony's taken yet another person's existence, this time the Spirit Knight Julius. Yet another major player in Subaru's rise to fame, and a key figure as to how he survived this long as well, making his feat seem even more comically absurd to anyone else in the ReZero universe, besides the witches, of course. And this time, I'm not including Rem or Julius, so it'll be extra glazing of Subaru, I guess. If you're here for the Julius cut alone, and I've already watched the Rem cut, you can skip right to Season 3, by the way, because Julius doesn't appear in Arc 1 and 2. Oh, and something else before I begin, I want to thank Weeb Complex 1262, because I am taking that name that you suggested, the Memory of ReZero's World, Arc whatever. I'm gonna use that as this series name, because that's a cool ass name. And with that being said, let's run it. After his convenience store run went awry, Subaru Natsuki spawned into the royal capital of Lagunica with his convenience store goods in hand. I still do wonder what this looked like to other people as it happened. In any case, the oddly dressed and equipped Japanese teen approached Katoman's shop. Here, we're skipping 3 deaths. This vaguely noble-looking 17-year-old weirdly asked the merchant how many times he's seen him, to which he obviously replied only 1, followed by the kid confidently declaring he's broke beyond compare and dashing away. Only for minutes later to return out of breath, asking questions about any pickpocketing incidents around here lately, then promising to buy an Appa in the future and then running off again. What a weirdo. Then some crooks stumbled upon the boy who engaged with them as if they'd already done this stick-up song and dance together many a time before, who then instantly called the guards for help, which he 1001% received in the form of Reinhard von Astria. Having Reinhard, who we'd somehow never even heard of, deal with that, he dashed away loot house bound, denying the Master Swordsman's aid. Also, as Reinhard stated here, he definitely seemed to be from a foreign land, with his lack of knowledge and strange getup. Finally, in the slums, Subaru was next spotted by Felt, suspiciously rustling through her house, prompting a much-warranted assault. But then, after dropping her name out of nowhere, he attempted to quickly trade his Mitya for a hefty 20+ holy coins. But she was first required to double-check the accuracy of this boy's assessment with Old Man Rom. Whoever this Subaru guy is really wanted this deal done and quick, as he may as well have been dragging her at their pace. Though, on the way, after talking about her dream of escaping the slums, he randomly patted her on the head, babbling about the fact that he's gonna make this all somehow work out. Whatever that means. Upon arrival and just before the negotiation for the Mitya was complete, Subaru let it slip that Elsa wouldn't go over 20+ holy coins when she arrived, which she definitely shouldn't know at this point unless he was working alongside the buyer. So Felt held off on the deal after becoming fairly suspicious of the tracksuit wearing individual, whatever a tracksuit is. While begging Felt to just do the trade for the insignia, would then come Amelia, who immediately began demanding the thief for her stolen pendant back, which led Felt to the conclusion of Subaru setting them up, soon leading to the greater confusion of Amelia, who's never seen this guy in her life. I love this part in particular because it's at this point everyone realized nobody knows what the hell Subaru is even doing here. Well, with one last idea of what he could be, an accomplice to Elsa. Suddenly forcing fear and panic was the woman of the hour, who appeared from the darkness to slice Amelia's bowels. Luckily, Subaru shouted for Puck to shield her, and he did, just in time too. Now that right there is awfully sus. 1, Subaru, how do you know about Puck? And 2, Subaru, how do you know what Puck is capable of? And 3, why are you acting so buddy-buddy with Puck even though you've never met him in your life? This is only ever brought up one more time in a ReZero Break Time, which is like a chibi spin-off, but even still, the conversation doesn't really go anywhere anyway. They just call him suspicious and move on. Well, I mean, they're not wrong, but hell, Subaru even later on brings up what time Puck falls asleep every day as if it's common knowledge. If I was them, I'd be convinced he was a hardcore stalker, but anyway, let's sweep that one under the rug. Subaru would go on to utter, "Do you know how much having your stomach cut open hurts? Because I do," continuing to heighten how much of a psycho he looked like. Elsa didn't seem to care though. In fact, it took less than no time at all to push the 4 into a corner. So much so that Felt needed to dash away in hopes of finding some help, begging anyone she could find to lend them aid, particularly guards. And she received so much more than just aid. God misheard the word guards and came down instead. Reinhard von Astria made his his return, saving this whole day from ending in complete slaughter for the quartet. With one final blow to Elsa, the loot house basically exploded and the day was saved, though the bowel-hunting Dami Mommy did escape. Subaru quickly asked for Emilia's name before passing out, to which she hurriedly healed our main character to stabilize him. Reinhard curiously questioned what her relationship to the boy is, but obviously this was her first time seeing him as well, perplexing the knight even further. He'd go on to relay the message told by Subaru to inform Emilia if he saw her beforehand, which he basically boiled it down to, "Don't worry about the insignia problem, I'll fix things." And after hearing this, Emilia understandably decided to take him back to the Roswell mansion for questioning. Alrighty, before he woke up, Beatrice would finalize the healing of Subaru's wounds, and later, after she went through all the trouble of setting up a never-ending hallway trap, the boy would annoyingly discover the resident Great Spirit with ease. Betty didn't miss a beat though and delivered a painful blow to the human, draining him of all of his mana to confirm he was in fact not an enemy, causing him to pass out once more, where he was brought back to his bed yet again, marking his second checkpoint. 4 deaths later, Subaru uttered, "I'm back here again." This time with Rom at his bedside, who was understandably quite concerned as this was definitely the first time this odd man had ever been here, who I should know was still emanating the Witch of Envy's pungent scent. Following some out-of-place jovial joking with the maid, Subaru suddenly grabbed a hold of her hand, resulting in a sigh of relief from Subaru but leading to a more so creeped-out emotion bubbling in Rom, who was logically assuming he's some sort of pervert. Soon after, Emilia walked in to check on Sue, where he suddenly appeared far happier upon just seeing her face and blurted out, "You were the wonder drug my heart needed." Emilia didn't really understand that though, because I doubt the ReZero world is medically advanced enough to have anything like a wonder drug. You know how in season 2 Garfield has all those one-liners that make zero sense to us at all? I feel like that's exactly what everyone else feels like talking to Subaru, which I have to believe was Nagatsuki's intention, and I absolutely love that. Then, Subaru's request to start work here at the mansion was heeded by Roswell, and his life as a butler began. During his first lunch break, he hung out with Puck and Emilia, the former letting Subaru know all about the basics of the mechanics of magic and the different types. Subaru ended up with the rather rare affinity for shadow magic, and in a no less than terrifying display by Puck, he figured out how to cast Shamok, albeit very roughly at the moment since this was his first time ever using magic. During that evening, Ross and Rom were discussing Subaru. In terms of abilities, he's completely incompetent, but when it counts he can be excessively quick-witted. It may be necessary to keep an eye on him for the time being. Subaru, even later into the night, out of nowhere asked Beatrice how to counter a shaman's attack, and Beatrice laid out the facts of it being impossible to counter a curse once it's activated and must be detected before it is to nullify it. And the next day, unlike yesterday's far more relaxed and likable attitude, their guest turned butler woke up with a disgustingly unnatural burst of energy. He spent the whole morning running around, doing the most amount of chores he could while trying to please everyone. Obviously though, his rather manic state pleased nobody. Emilia and Puck obviously took notice of Subaru's mental state, commenting on Subaru's insides and outside being completely different. This continued until Subaru's already sinking ship eventually capsized as he puked into a sink. With his physical appearance wearing thin and his mental exhaustion finally reaching its peak, Emilia requested he come to her room. Here, our protagonist assertively received a lap pillow from Emilia, who granted the boy some much-needed respite. The moment he stopped distracting himself from his own mind was the moment he would break down and tearfully weep onto her skin. Even though Emilia didn't know what was happening with Subaru, she consoled him nonetheless. Halfway through that same night, the newly nicknamed Bayako's door crossing was broken through for the second time now without her permission, yet again with complete ease. At first, it seemed the boy's reasoning was just to rant to the librarian about his embarrassing evening, before informing her of his primary objective for barging in so late at night. A question: can curses be detected before they're activated? The answer, yes. And some extra insight, they can only be placed through physical contact. By the way, in his little monologue talking to himself out loud here, Subaru literally says that he died. He admitted to dying, right here, while muttering to himself, in front of Beatrice. Then, after excitedly exclaiming how it all fits now, he hoisted the lolly up and professed his love for her while swinging her around the room, before she, of course, blasted him down, knocking him unconscious. Also, I'm just gonna assume every time Betty knocks Subaru out, she has to drag him all the way back to his bed personally. Tomorrow came and it was time to visit Arlem Village for some radio calisthenics. Alright. Afterward, the maid learned her new pet name Subaru told the kids to give her. He was bitten by a dog, and for some reason that meant his mission here was complete. Next up, back to Beatrice. Here, she noticed his actually prophetic curse, and reminded him that once it's activated, he will die. Weirdly though, upon hearing that, his expression failed to really change at all, which disturbed Betty. In fact, he seemed to almost be enjoying this. Eventually though, she agreed to cure it, and with her doing so, Subaru learned who placed the curse. The puppy the village kids were fostering, leading now to a complete change in Subaru's expression as he rushed off to explain the situation to Rom. Next stop, back to the village. Here, Subaru was soon forced to realize a bunch of the village kids had gone missing along with one of the barrier crystals protecting the village to be broken. So, he alone rushed into the forest to save them, which he crazily enough succeeded in doing. On the way back, Subaru almost became demon dog food, though thankfully he was just barely able to fend them all off on his own, and escaped the forest alive. He still passed out after reaching the village though. Following that, come morning, Subaru awoke next to Puck, who applauded him for his correct judgment of the curse. He then visited all the kids to make sure they were safe, and Betty met Barusu at the village gate, who was quite put off when Subaru didn't seem all too worried after she once more reminded him of his impending death less than a day away. The conversation continued, which eventually led to Subaru being told how to eliminate the curses placed on him in the forest by death of the caster. So a lone Subaru Natsuki, the absolute mobby slaying Chad, once again embarked into the forest by himself to free himself of the now many deadly curses placed on him. Eventually though, even Subaru would be pushed to his limits as he came across the ultimate big boss of the Ulgarm. Thankfully, Roswell appeared back from his business meeting just in time and destroyed it, along with all the other surrounding mob beasts, thus saving Subaru from the curses once and for all, leading to his adrenaline to finally run on empty and for him to pass out once again. That night, Subaru asked Amelia out on a date, which she agreed to for tomorrow. Though tomorrow it was time for Puck's magic release period, so instead of that date, they had a snow festival hosted by Natsuki, where by the end of the night, everyone was drunk as shit, warming up to Subaru a whole lot more. Whoever this guy is, wherever he came from, has undeniably had a positive impact on the Roswell mansion. Things were looking up for Subaru. He'd been able to save everyone at the loot house, start his job as a butler in the Roswell mansion, rescue a bunch of kids from mob beasts, uncurse himself, as well as securing a date with a princess candidate. You can't get much better than that. A month later, an unfamiliar carriage could be seen parked outside the mansion, so Subaru investigated and discovered Wilhelm, whom he indulged in conversation with. Much later, regarding their conversation, Felix inquired why he would bother talking to the boy, as Wilhelm is known far better for his sword than his social skills. So, Sir Von Astria revealed he took a liking to his eyes which seemed to have experienced death several times over. The reason the two had even stopped here was because of Amelia's enlistment in Felix's services, that of his healing capabilities to aid in the restoration of Subaru's broken magic gate. Next up, Roswell convinced Amelia to let Subaru come along back to the capital where she would be initiating her participation in the royal selection. The reason he let Subaru come was so he had the opportunity to express his gratitude to the people he owed thanks to here. Once arrived, Natsuki firstly made good on his promise to Katomon and visited his shop for some apples. Then Amelia needed to use the conference mirror, so she had Subaru wait outside. And minutes later, he saw Priscilla being mugged. He intervened to save her, which she didn't appreciate, and finally reunited with Old Man Rom in that same alleyway. After that kerfuffle, back at Cruchet's place, Subaru complained regarding him being disallowed to accompany Amelia to the royal selection hall. Amelia possessed the fear that he'd push himself too far again for her. So, soon, a disappointed Subaru promised not to use his magic nor push himself, and she set out after asking him to give her a reason to trust him. After all, he hides so much as it is already. Almost immediately upon her departure, Subaru would, of course, disobey that very promise and hitch a ride with Priscilla to enter the royal selection hall. Following a speech explaining why these 5 candidates are the ones qualified to become this country's next leader, Amelia's dismay upon witnessing Subaru's appearance here would be warranted. Before long, Amelia was condescendingly called a half-devil, with relation to the Witch of Envy, and Subaru snapped upon belittling, disrespecting, and downright insulting the entirety of the Holy Knights on baseless accusations in front of an entire crowd full of them. Amelia's name was tarnished even further by Subaru, the pathetic excuse of a self-proclaimed knight. As such, Subaru... Okay, so we can go 2 routes with this, right? Let me go through them with you guys from least likely to most likely to what everyone sees this scene as. 1. Subaru began furiously hitting himself like a psycho. 2. Subaru never even entered the arena in the first place and this whole scene never happened. Or 3. The most likely situation, Subaru was fighting somebody whose face nobody collectively can seem to place. And I think that's still really funny anyway. This guy who was talking mad shit was challenged by some nobody knight, probably a rookie with no friends, presumably to make a name for himself, only for everyone to not even realize who he was anyway. With that being said, during this duel, Subaru Natsuki was utterly outclassed, not to mention nearly murdered by one so presumably new to knighthood, and so lacking in achievements, looks, and presence, basically so incredibly bland and ordinary that their name still isn't known, even after this brutal beatdown. The only thing this crowd could seem to remember was how irredeemably powerless Subaru was that day. Upon waking up, Emilia and Subaru would have a chat, well, more so a huge fight. Emilia, extremely upset with him, explained that she really did want to trust Subaru, but there was no reason to after his display today, upon hearing which he would full-on angrily break down in front of the one he loves, trying to play off his selfishness as selflessness, only digging himself into a deeper and deeper hole of despair, resulting in Emilia's abandonment of Subaru, cutting ties with the boy and returning to the capital without her self-proclaimed knight, who was still scheduled to be healed by Felix. The next day, Subaru was seen training with Will, though to Felix's discerning eye, this was but a distraction, as no actual improvement was being visualized. Following that night was the fourth day in the capital. Subaru was out on a shopping trip which seemed to be going great. Only this is the exact moment of our next checkpoint, where Subaru would endure 3 painstaking deaths, where the boy would go from still distraught after his argument with Emilia, though recovering of course, to being absolutely devastated. Imagine being Kadomon having a nice conversation with the boy who'd come back to thank you for helping him out in the past. But the second you look back up to talk to him, you see this. Before he dashed away in a panic for seemingly no reason at all. It seems like all this kid does is get freaked out and run away from his shop. To Kadomon, Subaru must seem like some paranoid schizo individual, constantly asking strange questions with a really terrified look in his eyes, not to mention the constant running away from his shop. Throughout the next day, a somehow newly invigorated Subaru all by himself completed the seemingly impossible task of gathering together allies and information in preparation for the all-important negotiation with Crochet. That's right, all in a single, very efficient day. A single, impossibly efficient day, you might say. Said meeting's purpose? To broker the creation of an alliance to defeat the White Whale, one of the 3 great demon beasts plaguing the ReZero world, once and for all. Along with granting Crochet the Roswell Domain's mining rights, Subaru also possessed knowledge of the exact time and place the demon beast of the mist would next appear, thanks to his Metia. Luckily, Crochet could tell he wasn't lying about the Metia's purpose thanks to her divine protection. But there's just one problem with all this. Will Crochet even want to help with the subjugation of the whale? Well, that just turns out to be another one of Subaru's bets paying off. 3 major things led him to the conclusion that she would help. 1. Through his recent observations of the high traffic passing in and out of Crochet's property. 2. Anastasia letting him know of Crochet's large amount of transactions regarding weaponry and armor as of late. And 3. Subaru's overhearing of many conversations with members of Crochet's party and allies regarding something big bound to happen soon. Now again, this very well could have been anything, but it was required for Subaru to gamble. He simply didn't have time to waste to figure out if the whale was in fact their target. Not only does he have this arsenal of information and bargaining tools, this man who'd condemned the Holy Knights only days ago in a disgusting display seemed like a completely different person now. A person who also had the foresight to even call upon Russell Fellow and Anastasia Hoshin to join the meeting halfway through. Turns out Anastasia's forces would be assisting in the battle, as the Great Beast had also been in her way for quite some time. Russell, however, was more interested in Subaru's proposition to the mining rights, which will allow the Roswell Domain's magic stones to be distributed throughout the capital through Crochet. As the Merchant Guild's representative, letting that opportunity pass him by would be an utter failure of his craft. With that, we had all of Subaru's cards laid out on the table. You have to wonder how the hell did this guy get around and do all that, but I don't know, man, I couldn't tell you. With an offer like this, how could she ever turn this down? So, of course, Subaru's bet paid off and she agreed, concluding our meeting. Even after the negotiations were complete, Crochet was met with yet some more surprises, with the fact that Subaru's groundwork went even further. Turns out, he agreed to give Russell the Metia after the whale's defeat, along with granting the Hoshin Company an unspecified amount of money if the meeting went well, which I think it's safe to say it did. One day, Subaru will be an absolute mess of a human being, amounting to nothing more than a pathetic worm, suffering a beating to near death by some random low-tier knight nobody can seem to remember. Then, less than a week later, he'll appear to be the galaxy brain mastermind behind the unification of several enemy parties, with their coalition's goal being one of the 3 great demon beasts' much desired subjugation. Now that is an upgrade. Wilhelm, along with some more veteran swordsmen, thanks Subaru for giving them the opportunity for revenge once and for all, and the next day, after some rapid preparation, we were off! Following a few hours of travel, the convoy at last arrived at Flugel's tree, where they faced off against the fabled ivory-colored beast of legend. Something I really did gloss over in that first video is how impressive Subaru was here. He stayed on the front lines the entire time, all the while organizing important battle strategies, and once the boss fight reached its second phase and took to the skies, he instantly came up with a plan on the spot. A plan where he at some point mounted the white whale's horn, and then free fell while emitting the witch's miasma to attract and distract it, leading to the beast becoming grounded, where they then pinned it down and finished it off under Flugel's tree. 400 years worth of personal grudges towards the demonic creature were at last satisfied. After centuries of terror, the demon beast of the mist finally fell. Post-battle, he and Cruchet agreed to continue being friends, where she discovered the whale's subjugation was insanely only a secondary objective to Subaru. The main one, of course, being saving everyone at and around the Roswell mansion from the witch's cult, which he again, at this point, seemingly clairvoyantly knew would be attacking the Roswell mansion. Said witch's cult had exactly 0 interactions with Subaru yet, though he apparently knew precisely where they were hiding and informed everyone of their location. Everyone being half of Anastasio's mercenaries, including Mimi and Ricardo, and half of Cruchet's mercenaries, including Felix and Wilhelm. The fact Subaru knew this was obviously suspicious, so Will let everyone know about his recent findings. The connection between the whale's appearances and the cult activities coinciding with one another, so it's at least a bit more trustworthy, especially coming from Wilhelm. I guess I should mention Cruchet. Some more healthy soldiers and the rest of the injured departed in the opposite direction to the capital to get healed. I'll mention them later though. Subaru was on a roll and he wasn't letting this situation stop him. Skipping only a single death now, during planning for the cult's ambush, our main character suddenly asks the group if a magic exists that's capable of possessing someone, to which he received an answer from someone in the crowd that yes, in fact, it does. Though that magic only works on spirit users without a current contract with one. Here's the kicker though, Subaru just so happens to fit those conditions. All the successful plans and predictions he'd made so far had scarily worked and come true. So this man with seemingly omniscient knowledge was understandably blindly believed. Honestly, his immense knowledge of the cult, his constant mood swings and PTSD, not to mention the miasma all over him, would probably lead many to believe he's a survivor and victim of a witch cult kidnapping. Especially since he's the flagship for this whole operation. Anyway though, the plans were laid out, and so all that was left was to act. And the witch cult hunt began. First up, Wilhelm dropped by the mansion to inform Amelia of the misunderstanding about the letter they received. The blank letter. Weird, I wonder how that happened. Secondly, they gave the fake merchant cultist a schedule which was delayed by 2 hours and used that time to evacuate the villagers. In this timeline, the first time Subaru met Otto was right here actually, where he was wrongly accused and captured for being a cultist, resulting in friendly laughter from Mr. Natsuki. The merchant still thanked him for saving him, of course, but was still understandably super confused on why Subaru was acting so buddy-buddy with the guy. Anyway, Subaru and Subaru alone then embarked into the forest to defeat Petalgoose Romane Conti. Yes, I kid you not, without a single other ally, this madman charged into a Sin Archbishop's territory and won. Subaru Natsuki actually managed to back up his words of knightly denunciation and made all the other knights look like trash, as he confidently and seemingly with ease defeated Sloth in a 1v1 after not even a week ago losing to some rando. Well, that jump in power is simply unheard of. How in the hell could he have possibly gotten this strong, this fast? At this pace, Amelia's knight may as well be known as the next Reinhard. Not able to catch a break though, Felix informed them Amelia's carriage happened to be rigged with enough magic stones to blow up a small village. So he and Otto rushed to her carriage as fast as they could. Then Subaru once and for all killed the scum that was Petalgoose one final time. Also here, Subaru would inherit Petalgoose's authority of Sloth, the unseen hand. When they reached Amelia's carriage, Subaru grabbed the bag of magic stones, threw them into the whale's rotting corpse, and the day was saved. Subaru once again professed his love for Amelia, and the silver-haired girl thanked him from the bottom of her heart for saving her. Later, homeward bound in the carriage, Subaru endured one singular death. So, out of nowhere, Subaru, who I remind you had just a few seconds ago professed his love for Emilia, and was happily flirting with her on the way home after she had cried and thanked him so deeply, looked to have a sudden panicked and terrified expression with sweat built up on his face, who also appeared to be hyperventilating. He then jolted back to reality and fearfully demanded to know where a girl by the name of Rem is. That's the question though. Who's Rem? Anyway, cutting back to Cruchet's gang before they could get too far, two members of the witches cult attacked their convoy. Not just any old cult members either. These were two archbishops, Regulus Corneus and Libotan Kaitos, representing greed and gluttony respectively. After this battle and the White Whales, many casualties of unknown origin were noted. Soldiers who nobody had ever heard of, including a particular maid dressed just as Roswell Mather's pink-haired Rom does, but with a blue hue to her hair. So, returning back to Cruchet's estate, who, by the way, had her memories eaten but her name kept intact, the Duchess, Felix, Subaru, Wilhelm, and Emilia discussed the contemporary matters at hand. Of course, after giving Subaru the evening to grieve over that blue-haired maid's lack of existence. Oh, also in that scene, Puck ordered Subaru to take care of Emilia from now on. The subject of disbanding their alliance was brought up by Felix and said it caused a lot of trouble for them already, but that idea was rejected by the others, who would convince the cat it would be best to stay as allies for the time being. The cultists desire the revival of Satella through Emilia's body, so if they stick around, they're sure to show up again. So with the interest of revenge, but more so regaining Cruchet's memories back, the alliance was retained. After a night's rest, Felix ordered Subaru before they parted ways that since he'd been working his gate overtime lately, he's gonna need to wait until 2 months pass before attempting any magic again. Arriving back at Arlem, concern projected onto the villagers' faces. The half who evacuated to the sanctuary had still not returned. Upon realizing even Emilia was unaware of the sanctuary's location, they headed to the Mather's mansion for clues. Here, they met Frederica Baumann, a maid who had taken a temporary leave of absence for personal reasons just before Subaru's initial arrival. Luckily, Frederica does know the sanctuary's location, so after a 2-day prep time, the fanged maid gave Emilia a pyrazine crystal to allow them entry through the sanctuary's barrier. On their way, Emilia took note of Puck suddenly not present, but without time to discuss where he could have possibly gotten off to, Frederica's crystal suddenly began to glow, so thinking quickly in a panic, Subaru yanked it off, and then it glowed even brighter in Subaru's hands, coalescing with him being teleported into the woods. Waking up alone now, Subaru was visited by a small and skittish pink-haired girl. She quickly ran away upon him noticing, as if to beckon him, so he followed her in hopes of reaching some answers until stopping in a large clearing with a stone temple in the center. Curiosity overcame young Su as he stepped foot into the building's cold interior, and soon left with the odd feeling of someone talking to him but possessing no recollection. Upon exiting, Otto could be seen knocked out of the carriage, dazed and confused, all thanks to Garfield, who almost murdered Subaru. But one cleared up misunderstanding later, and Patriche led the way to the main part of the sanctuary with their newfound ally. Arriving after Subaru's saddening reminder that Rom didn't believe herself to have ever had a sister, Emilia reminded Sue that he and she are a team now, stating they'll fix everything together from here on out. And the next stop was Roswell's lodging, where he was bandaged from head to toe from attempting to free the sanctuary of his demi-human binding curse through the trials. Though it was, of course, rejected, so why hadn't the villagers, who aren't even demi-humans at all, left already? Well, Garfield here is keeping him under house arrest. He'd been waiting specifically for Emilia to arrive to free the sanctuary's inhabitants. With the question of why the villagers hadn't returned yet at last answered and the only way to leave revealed, Emilia was forced to partake in the first of 3 trials. After a quick visit with the Arlem villagers, and immediately after entering the Witch of Greed's grave, the temple glowed in neon blue, which meant she was qualified, but its luster blackened almost instantly. Upon Garfield noting that is definitely not supposed to happen, Subaru dashed inside to investigate, though when he did, something unprecedented happened. The temple lit up again, confusing everyone since only demi-humans should be capable of undergoing the trial. Nonetheless, Subaru reached an unconscious Emilia and soon passed out himself, forcing the human, who shouldn't even be allowed, to take on the first trial and face his past. Feels like forever since I've said this, but before waking up for real, we're finally skipping some more deaths, and not just a paltry sum. This is the most deaths poor Sue had experienced for a single checkpoint so far. A total of 5 excruciatingly painful deaths later, and his brain was now surging with knowledge as if he met the Witch of Greed herself. Oh wait, He did. This knowledge included Ryuzu's facility, plus Echidna's immortality experiments in them. The fact Beatrice has what he thinks is a gospel, Roswaal possessing a tome of wisdom, and knowing of Subaru's RBD. The fact assassins are attacking the mansion, along with the exact day they would come. Knowledge of Snowfall coming, followed by the White Rabbit attacking the sanctuary, and much, much more. Roughly an hour of silence passed, and eventually the two emerged from the temple. So they all headed over to one of the village houses to discuss business. Here, Subaru, Otto, and Emilia met Ryuzu officially for the first time, who explained some stuff about the sanctuary's barrier and its background. Later that night, at a certain point, Patricia began thrashing around recklessly, so Otto undid the reins and she ran all the way to find Mr. Natsuki in the graveyard, which she was rejected from entering, by the way, to witness and save him from painfully enduring his second trial. Waking up, he gazed upon the stars instead of the expected stone ceiling, and after a bit of appreciation and genuine kindness from his friends, he soon attempted to start the third trial, but was rejected this time by Echidna's doing. Following his attempt, Roz received a visitor, Subaru, to inquire if he knows of a way to leave the sanctuary aside from the trial method. What he received was information far more grim, though. Roswaal instead let Subaru know he himself was the one who ordered the attack of the assassins on the mansion. Not only that though, the snowfall, followed by the White Rabbit being here, was also his doing. This was all a master plan in hopes of strengthening Subaru's resolve to force him to choose who he desires to save more. Following that revelation, the boy slowly backed away from Roswaal in despair, and ran away aimlessly in a fear-filled panic. The next time Subaru was spotted was the next morning, where Otto would discover a broken, muttering Subaru, repeating the same words of "what do I do" over and over and over again. Here, after a quick scuffle, Otto Suin assertively offered to help in any way he could, because, you know, it's okay to rely on a friend once in a while. This really cut deep with Subaru. Something so simple, something everyone had been beating into him ever since this arc began. More than ever, Subaru appreciated Otto as a beloved friend and ally, so he went on to explain the mansion situation to the merchant. Then, Subaru, with absolute confidence brimming in his eyes, marched on into Roswaal's house and exclaimed, "Roswaal, let's make a bet, with my wish and yours on the line." He revealed his grand proclamation that he's going to save the mansion and the sanctuary in this loop. If he managed to overcome this insurmountable feat, this naive boy demanded Roswaal throw his tome of wisdom away and join him in assisting Emilia to become the next princess. That's right, when given an ultimatum of who to save, Subaru found and uncovered a secret answer: everyone. I still love Subaru's mood swings so much. Just yesterday, Roswaal witnessed Subaru in absolute distress after hearing Ross's terrible news. Yet one night later, just one night later, and his confidence was through the roof, declaring he's going to save every single person possible, blowing away all of his expectations. And hell, this mood swing isn't even directly from RBD. After that, Subaru made haste to the facility to discuss the situation with Ryuzu to perhaps gain some more insight, which he weirdly, 1, knew the location of, 2, correctly surmised that Ryuzu would be here, and 3, even knew of her goal in the sanctuary, garnering her acknowledgement that the one Ross was waiting for was none other than the man before her. During this discussion, Ryuzu explained that there are multiple Ryuzu clones who take shifts, the fact they're spirits, the situation with Ryuzu's Shima, Garfield and Frederica's past, as well as some speculation on Garfield's motivation to prevent the liberation of the sanctuary, as swaying Garfield over to his side was critical to this mission's success. After their conversation concluded, Emilia was visited by Subaru. Good thing too, because we all know her mind was on the brink of destruction in this arc. Arriving, he found her cowering under the bed sheets, and Subaru was before long able to convince the half-elf to tackle the past she'd witnessed in her trial, the past she had not been able to overcome. She thanked him, and once that was all off her chest, her ability to sleep was soon returned and she drifted off. When Emilia awoke later, Puck was with her, and the two caught up with each other until the spirit suddenly broke their contract. His crystal shattered as he entrusted Subaru to her, leaving poor Emilia alone in her room to confront her once repressed memories that had now flowed back into her upon the termination of their contract. While young Gar's suspicion of Subaru's connections to the witch rose, Subaru returned to Emilia's room again to console the still heartbroken half half-elf, where he agreed to hold her hand until morning came. Unfortunately, to Emilia's sadness, she woke up in the middle of the night with Subaru nowhere to be seen, and was missing upon morning's arrival, leading to a search party starting. While Subaru was supposed to be with Emilia, Otto would recruit Rom to help take down Garfield in the future soon to come. Realizing something didn't feel quite right, a panicked Garfield rushed all around the sanctuary's grounds to find Shima, but to no avail, ending his search at the facility where he found Otto in her place. The merchant's mission to delay the unstoppable force that is Garfield would then begin. And later on, just when it appeared like Garf had Otto cornered, Rom appeared and tagged out Otto, leading to Garfield's fury and confusion. Garfield Tinsel demanded to know why and how they could have so much faith in Subaru, to which Rom replied, "He's weak, useless, and incompetent, but when it's do or die, he has surprisingly good timing. That's what Barusu is. If he believes he sees an opportunity and acts on it, you know that's our only path to victory." That is pretty funny. They've gotta think he gets flashes of the future or something, like some sort of seer. I love it though. To others, he's just that guy with perfect timing and, or I guess, incredible insight. Enraged, Garfield transformed. But back to Subaru now. He'd finally found Emilia, who had holed herself up in the graveyard hallway. She reproached him for leaving her during the night, and they eventually got into an argument, but it thankfully ended on a good note this time. Soon the two finally kissed here, after which he confidently declared she'd find a reason to believe in herself with her memories restored, and they exited the temple together. By the way, side note, Emilia still believed babies are made by kissing. Just thought I'd mention it, right? Outside, they found themselves a bloodied and beaten Garfield, dead set on destroying the building. Deciding now that he desired nothing more than to protect everyone around him, he transformed yet again. Subaru subsequently disobeyed Felix's recommendation to not use his gate for 2 months and casted a classic Shamok, beginning their bout. Oh yeah. Here, thanks to another YouTube comment, I learned that since Subaru had already been way overusing his gate as of late, it actually became defective after this moment. I didn't know that. So basically, rest in peace, Shamok. I think that's the only spell Subaru ever used, at least in the anime, right? At least he still got his authority of sloth. Speaking of, before long, Subaru taunted Garfield, so he attempted to strike him down. Yet Subaru stood firm, and suddenly his sloth authority uppercut Garf. To everyone else though, Garfield just flew the hell back out of nowhere. Though surprised by this, Garf still retained the upper hand and was soon ready to finish off Subaru before Patriche saved him and knocked him out, ending their duel. Both of them woke up that night in the laps of their respective girls, where Rom suggested Garf finally attempt the trial again, where he begrudgingly agreed and entered the temple to face his past, and later emerged successful. Then it was Emilia's turn. Inside, she found Subaru's love letters, good luck messages, and encouraging words he inscribed all over the temple's walls, where she finally, hopefully, must have realized why he had left her bedside during the night. I should also note, Subaru, if you've forgotten, was still rejected from entering the temple, so he without a doubt went through a ton of pain to write all those messages. Speaking of those, Garfield mentioned them to an embarrassed Subaru, which I suppose he forgot about. I bet for a brief moment, Garf thought they were for him. This went on until the Ryuzus appeared to talk about a subject that is unavoidable if they wish to liberate the sanctuary, the progenitor the 4 copies were derived from. During that conversation, Emilia would awake from her trial after having confronted her past, but didn't exit the grave quite yet, with her needing to contemplate what she had just overcome. Outside the tomb, Subaru thanked Shima for her explanation, and she entrusted the rest to young Sue as Rom, her, and the other copy hobbled off facility bound to relax. The guys also departed as their next destination was Margrave Mathers. The 4 demanded he give up and call off the assassins, but Roswell's stubborn attitude and beliefs were steadfast, far more than they'd hoped. Roswell relished in their defiance, forcing the battle to rage on into Team Subaru's Plan B. Baru handed Rom Puck's new crystal, and the next stop was the Roswell mansion. Following a farewell to the boys, the pink-haired maid returned to greet Emilia, who was just exiting the tomb in the wake of completing her first trial. The maid bowed her head and pleaded for Emilia to save Roswell from his illusions by assuming the royal throne. And seconds later, an eavesdropping Roswell appeared to denounce her decision to keep walking forward as meaningless. But Emilia rejected Roswell's negativity before once more turning her back to the two and resolutely beginning the second trial. Rom would, a short time later, in order to finally put an end to his delusions herself, summon Puck from his new crystal to begin their deadly battle. During that battle, Rom declared her love for Roz, and with the assistance of Puck, she managed to catch him off guard and threw his Tome of Wisdom in the fire, incinerating his would-be fortunes. Roswaal, completely enraged, delivered a seemingly fatal blow to Rom, but immediately snapped out of it and regret overcame Margrave Mathers. With the duel done, Puck soon rushed off to delay the rabbits and stop the snow. While that was all happening, Emilia finished her second trial and exited the temple to find all the residents of the village and the sanctuary happily awaiting her return. After some encouraging words from everyone, she steeled herself and marched onward into Echidna's final trial. And then, after experiencing countless possible futures and even meeting Minerva, Emilia woke up. The door facing the hallway seemed to have opened, and inside she bore witness to Echidna's grave. And attached was the spell creating the barrier. With a single strike, the incredibly intricate string of magic before her was smashed to bits. Then she dashed outside to meet everyone waiting for her. Them and a hellish blizzard, of course. She decided she still had something she needed to do, so Emilia sprinted over to the facility and met all the Ryuzus there. Upon arriving, Shima, along with the crystal containing the original Ryuzu, disintegrated to prevent the irreparable damage her not doing this would cause, as quoted from her. Following that, everyone dashed over to the battlefield where they found a broken Roswaal helplessly trying to save Rom. Emilia realized she was still alive, but the rabbits were closing in. So they returned to the graveyard with Emilia leading them. Meanwhile, Subaru, Garfield, and Otto at last reached the mansion, and they made it just in time too. Frederica was in the process of fighting Elsa, and Petra was... well, she was doing what any 12-year-old girl would be doing in this situation, and running for her life! During the battles against the assassins, while trying to take down a particularly strong mob beast, Subaru and Otto accidentally set aflame to the entire mansion in the process. Take that, Roswaal. Eat a fucking dick. Even later, Garfield crushed the shit out of Elsa with a giant pig's corpse, brutally murdering her. They did leave Melee alive, though. Now, the only one left to save was Beatrice. After many failed attempts already, he realized the only door left to try was Roswaal's secret one. Oh yeah, about that. In this timeline, Subaru should not be aware of that door. The fact that he has this knowledge literally saved this loop. If he hadn't known about it, he would literally lose his bet with Roswaal, which Roz was probably banking on. Subaru, in a true display of how far he's come since first entering the sanctuary, requested for Beatrice to save him. And after a lot of convincing, his words finally, and I mean finally, got through to the Great Spirit, and she took his hand. They quickly zoomed back to where Emilia was facing off against the White Rabbit by herself with her back against the wall. Working together now, Beatrice, Emilia, and Subaru managed to rid the world of yet another one, or I suppose I should say thousands, of the great demon beasts plaguing the ReZero world again. Once and for all. So now, after being the mastermind behind the White Whale's defeat, along with playing a huge role in said battle, this legendary man also played a part in the White Rabbit's demise. This time, Subaru and Emilia's camp in general will appear even more amazing than they already seem to the public. I mean, think about it. Yeah, we're dealing with a whole different ballpark here, but with the whole White Whale, it took 3 separate factions working together to subjugate it. Meanwhile, with the rabbit, it just took the princess candidate, the legend himself, Subaru Natsuki, along with a great spirit in the name of Beatrice, who is now his contracted spirit, I might add. After the rabbit's demise, Roz and Betty visited Echidna's grave together, and here we, along with Beatrice, learn this is the same Roswaal from 400 years ago. The Roswaal Beatrice and Echidna knew personally. When they finished their talk, everyone met at the cathedral to individually punch Roswaal for repentance. And of course, he did finally apologize. Much later on, with everyone gathered together at a rented ceremonial hall, Subaru would officially become Emilia's knight. Then the two took each other's hand and danced, and well, that concludes the true timeline of ReZero. Until Season 3, of course. Speaking of, it's been a whole year since the Sanctuary, and Yoshua Euclius was here to relay an invite from Anastasia to a party in Pristella. Not only that, she came upon some intel about the location of a catalyst crystal we can use to bring Puck back. Upon first interaction, Subaru was acting more so on his silly and immature side, getting all ooey-gooey over his appropriate title of knight being mentioned, before immediately snapping out of it and jumping right into the formalities that title should elicit. Right off the bat, Yoshua admitted certain rumors had been spread about Subaru Natsuki, and he was surprised to see how true they actually are. Over the past year, it's clear to see he's matured while still balancing his goofiness in between. In any case, they agreed to meet for Anastasia's party, and before long they were off to Pristella. En route, Otto lore dumped some current standings with the royal selection candidates, and made particular mention that though Emilia is there mostly to balance the numbers, opinions of her camp have improved over the past year. Her achievements of working with Anastasia and Cruciate to defeat the White Whale, not to mention the defeat of a Sin Archbishop bishop of the witches cult, all spearheaded by her knight. With that being said, the group at last made it to Wings on the Water Inn, where Anastasia was here to greet everyone. Immediately upon entering, Subaru made his familiarity with the architecture known, as it was quite clearly Japanese inspired, but to these guys that's Kararagi. So I suppose he either must seem to be from there, or he just really studied up on it, as Anastasia theorized. After lunch, en route to purchase the crystal from the songstress maniac Kiritaka, Subaru and Betty hopped off early since his motion sickness kicked in far too early. And then they stumbled upon that aforementioned songstress herself. After Subaru utterly insulted her lyrics in front of the crowd, he was rightfully punished. The duo stayed until her set was complete. He even joined in on one of them, which she came up with relating to Subaru and Beatrice. Then she offered to lead the way to Kiritaka Muse. Once they finally reached the Muse Company building, Subaru was, at this point, quite weirded out on her insistence of constantly creating and performing songs out of the blue so frequently. Even going way too far, comparing her to Betelgeuse on the creepiness scale. That is insulting. Oh my god, Subaru. And when Subaru at last unveiled who Betelgeuse exactly was, it then all clicked in with Liliana. This must be the little girl user, or Lollymancer, as some translations take it. His notoriety had garnered him this absolutely petrifying nickname. Thankfully, that particular trait wasn't his entire rise to fame. She would go on to excitedly fangirl over his achievements in battle with the White Whale, describing him as the groomsman of history, whom even the sword demon Wilhelm called his savior. Not sure if that one was a Liliana original, but it's definitely the less popular title of the two. And she even went on to say his efforts, with everyone else's help of course, shook the entire world by taking down Sloth and the White Rabbit. I am so glad we got this scene here. Really puts into perspective that Subaru's popularity is already spread worldwide. Every single person involved in that battle glazed Subaru's ass so hard. Her rants also answered another question that was bugging me since season 2, that being if the outside world even knows of the White Rabbit's elimination. So, hell yeah, Subaru may as well be a living legend at this point, especially for any common folk like Liliana here. She spoke of so many rumors about our boy so enthusiastically, soon exclaiming her plans to compose many new songs about his journeys to spread his legend even further. So I doubt his popularity will wane anytime soon. With that being said, in hopes that he'd share more material with the songstress, Liliana far too eagerly dashed in to help with the almost finalized negotiation for Puck's crystal, but Subaru happened to be grabbing her to get her to stop when they barged in, and the songstress maniac saw the Lollymancer touching his lolly. And that's the last we saw of that negotiation. Sorry, Puck, you'll have to wait a little bit longer. On their way back to the inn to figure out their next plan of action, Subaru, Emilia, and Rachins? You know that thug from the Capital's alleyway who Subaru called Reinhardt for help with? Yeah, that Rachins, or Dumber as Subaru dubbed him, is working for Felt now, and they were reunited. And I've gotta say, it must be so confusing to be Rachins right now. The man you formerly mugged and threatened to murder is now acting like you guys were best friends at some point. And soon after, it was Reinhard von Astria's turn. Re-entering the inn, a whole bunch of old faces were reacquainted with. Let's make particular mention of Cruche, who revealed the reason she's here is because Anastasia offered her a lead to gluttony. Then, immediately, Subaru seemed like he was about to lose himself and begin one of his tantrums. Though, with no outside help, he diffused himself, realizing Anastasia only never offered it to Subaru because she was thinking as a merchant would. A lesson he learned from her. Plus, Cruche was planning on telling Natsuki anyway. And then, in less than a minute, he was back to a bright smile, promising the Duchess there'd be no hard feelings regarding who deals the final blow to gluttony. This likely sparked a great deal of respect in the others. Subaru really does seem to have grown up, if only just a bit. Following a rather fun evening indulging in Wings on the Water's amenities, besides Garfield of course, who'd been fighting his inner demons of inferiority, Subaru happened across Wilhelm gazing wistfully at the moon, so the boy talked to him. After a while, the topic returned to Subaru's tale, where Wilhelm, I'm sure a top 3 glazer of Subaru, claimed what Liliana had said earlier about his legend spreading further and faster than he probably realizes. And now, beyond what a possibly crazy songstress superfan babbled on and on about, he's hearing those same words again from the sword demon himself. Subaru, in denial, brushed off his words, claiming how all he is a useless, insignificant loser. So, Wilhelm described that even still, that's what the old man quite likes about Subaru. In a way, Wilhelm views Subaru more as a grandson than Reinhard himself. He would go on and vent to the young knight about his troubled relationship with the Sword Saint. So what Subaru did was push Wilhelm towards recalling the events of the battle with the White white whale with his real grandson, instead of with Subaru, whom Reinhardt was planning to ask a few details about. The next morning, what Subaru pushed for almost happened until a conveniently timed drunken Heinkel barged in during breakfast, who half-jokingly ordered Subaru's death all because of his intense glare, soon bringing up Teresia's death and even denouncing Emilia's participation in the royal selection. Heinkel really was here just to start shit. Luckily, everyone in the room never seemed to give Heinkel the reaction he was looking for. In fact, it was soon shown why he even came in the first place. Priscilla, who had completely forgotten who Subaru even is. Damn, couldn't even remember her APA supplier, or whatever the hell his job was. Afterwards, she unveiled she brought Heinkel here simply to cause a disruption between this unstable family solely for entertainment value alone. Then, that's when Subaru had another outburst, denouncing her actions. And this is when Subaru's role was put on full display. Everyone here, but more so Anastasia, knows Subaru is a loose cannon, and they've come to expect him to simply come out and exclaim his indignation out loud, something the other parties don't have the pleasure of doing, especially regarding a superior. In fact, the others found calmness and familiarity with his outburst. Many people like Reinhardt and Wilhelm all find solace in the odd, heart-on-a-sleeve lifestyle he seems to live and find comfort in his straightforwardness. Soon following that, Al approached Subaru at the inn's entrance and dropped the bombshell on Subaru that he's also from Japan. Later, whilst Emilia, Subaru, and Beatrice were out for a walk, they came across the duet of Liliana and Priscilla performing for a crowd. Afterward, the five ended up talking and having a good time, so Liliana led the conversation into making a song to commemorate their newfound friendship. And that's just when Subaru endured 3 diabolical deaths in alternate timelines. All of a sudden, after she suggested that song, Subaru looked incredibly pale, clenching Beatrice's hand to the point of hurting her while staring right through Liliana. Subaru quickly moved the conversation to him and Beatrice going shopping out of the blue. At first, Bayako was super surprised by this, but one look at his forced smile told her all she needed to know. Much like Season 1's Maw Beast curse incident, what seemed to be some sort of divine protection of premonitions had activated again for Subaru, where he would soon drop his happy act upon reaching a nearby alley with the knowledge of the witch cult showing up in town square. Not only that though, he knew exactly which cult member it was and a good idea of how her abilities function. Now, Betty of course has played these games before, so she knows all too well Subaru isn't lying. And this goes beyond just believing in his good timing, as Rom stated last season. Beatrice and Subaru workshopped the best way to counter Sirius is to use Subaru's favorite spell, Shamak. So they made their way there, but were soon interrupted by an eavesdropping Emilia, who was convinced to follow them by Priscilla's words of warning. That also goes to show how perceptive Priscilla truly is. Subaru tried to push Emilia away, but with the two seeing how close Subaru was to crying, it was pointless. So the three marched onwards to town square. Immediately upon Wrath's arrival, would Emilia cast an Alhuma in her direction, but the bandaged woman seemed unfazed, with the attack only angering the Sin Archbishop. In her fury-filled monologue, Subaru ended up talking over Sirius, noting how something's changed and how she wasn't acting anything like this before. Subaru then somehow knew a child was being held prisoner at the highest point of the clock tower, so he and Beatrice flew up to rescue him. But that's when the fight of Emilia versus Sirius became all but one-sided as Regulus arrived to her rescue, as the two cultists kidnapped Emilia to be his 79th wife. Okay, not quite. The cultists hilariously and realistically actually don't get along at all. Sirius wants the, quote, wretched half-devil dead, and Regulus desires Emilia to be his wife. So they broke out into a fight. Before long, Subaru unveiled Unseen Hand, and it was at that point Sirius took particular note of him, and soon launched into another extended monologue exclaiming how she's found him, and how she's utterly infatuated with, not Subaru, but Betelgeuse. But anyway, before long, the bell tolled, and according to the gospel, that meant their mission here was done. So Sirius left in peace, and Regulus escaped with Emilia, before, of course, launching a pebble at Subaru's leg, obliterating half of it with the sheer kinetic force. So, the surprise witch cult attack had officially begun. Aside from those two, Lai, Bot, and Kaito showed up near Otto at the city's gate. And later, during Subaru's recovery, he survived thanks to Betty and Ferris's extended and strenuous healing efforts, not to mention Al dragging him over here, would Capella announce herself through the city's hijacked announcement Metia. The witch cult now had total control over the city's 4 control towers. So, our side subsequently discussed their next course of action. The witch cult is invading this city with the intention of procuring the witch's remains, the location of only the Council of 10 are privy to, with the only named member of which being Kiritaka. After the meeting was cut short by a distraught Garf carrying a bloodied Mimi in his arms, would they head downstairs to heal her, with Amelia's shield being thrown into such a panicked state, not to mention one of their main fighters down. The situation's hopelessness was exacerbated to destructive degrees. Though in times like these, Subaru always seemed to come in clutch and know exactly what to do. So the room understandably turned to him for their next immediate plan of action. I mean, why wouldn't he know? He was so instrumental in the battle against Sloth. He took him on 1v1 for God's sake. And with Subaru leading them, the white whale was a cakewalk. So to get them out of this predicament should be a cinch, right? Annoyed, he exclaimed he was still thinking, and exclaimed if he did have some sort of game plan, his leg wouldn't have been blown off earlier. Yeah, fair play. He would soon bring up his immense desire to secure Amelia's safety, but clarified his mind's priority, on the other hand, knew he needed that loudspeaker media to increase the mental fortitude of the already waning citizens' mental states. So, they now had their next target. Lust. En route, Al abandoned their group to seek out Priscilla, and a rage-filled snap was bubbling in Subaru. Though he soon diffused himself, but that tension was still there in the background. After the realization they'd be one man down for a battle against a Sin Archbishop, Subaru was still obviously put off and worried. Yet Ricardo was still brimming with confidence. Why was that? Well, since Subaru is their, quote, secret weapon. His inspiration he imbued on that battlefield would shock him even further when Ricardo explained it was his passion and bravery that held their whole team together. Moving further in, they charged into battle against the two cultists who did Mimi and Garfield in earlier, and following a stalemate against the duo, Capella emerged in dragon form. Subaru immediately began shit-talking her with an air of unfound confidence and cockiness, denouncing the Sin Archbishop's lackadaisical attitude and lackluster entrance for some unhinged, unknown reason. Thankfully, the bell tolled once more, so the Sin Archbishops returned to their posts, leaving Garf, Wilhelm, and Ricardo to deal with those three. Atop the building now, in quick succession, they were jump-scared by Roy Alfard at the top, one of the faces representing gluttony. They quickly dashed away, Subaru not letting his anger get the best of him, and managed to escape the cultists, but it was out of the flames and into the fire. Capella Emerata Lugunica was next. This could only go well. This did not, in fact, go well. After Cruce took down the dragon and saved the little girl, Subaru rushed into the room where the other hostages were supposed to be, only to find a room full of formerly human giant flies. And then, upon turning around, that girl from earlier amalgamated to transform into Lust, stepping on a now unconscious princess candidate. In a rage, Subaru straddled a loose piece of rubble and bludgeoned Capella's face in. But her regeneration proved too strong. Some people shit on Subaru for the whip, but damn can he use it to great heights, especially considering he's just a regular dude at the end of the day. Assuming Capella's body can be compared to a regular human, that's an absolute insta-kill any day of the week for normal opponents. But it's not often Subaru's fighting civilians, so his strengths will continue to be outclassed by his divinely protected comrades. Then though, Subaru of course was beaten down and curb stomped. His leg was brutally severed before long, yet to keep him alive, Capella imbued some of her dragon blood inside of him, along with Cruce. Then the formerly human dragon blasted Lust before helping those two escape, though a final attack from the Archbishop caused an unconscious Subaru to plummet to the now flooding city. Directly following their escape, a frustrated Capella then announced that because of them actually wounding her, the cultists now had 3 more demands to be met. 1. Bring Capella the Tome of Wisdom that's been brought into the city. 2. Bring Capella the artificial spirit that's been brought into the city. 3. Let Regulus have his wedding with the silver-haired girl. So, these are all related to Amelia's camp. Awoken by the Sun Princess songstress duo, his leg appeared to have grown back thanks to the dragon blood, but not to perfect condition. In fact, this thing hardly looked like a leg at all anymore. Not only that, it didn't act like a leg either, with newfound regenerative swiftness akin to Capella's. So, the dragon blood is one of the 3 treasures the Holy Dragon bestowed upon Lugunica's royal family. And now, Subaru also possessed it. In any case, after relaying to Subaru the cult's new demands and seeing how filled with determination he had become, Priscilla approved of his attitude and the 3 moved on to the countless shelters across Bristella so Liliana could quell the effects of Wrath's authority. After that, Subaru left on his own, Muse Company bound, and soon arrived not at the company building, but the government one instead. Turns out their earlier efforts against Lust weren't in vain. The Muse Company had just been attacked by Sirius Romane Conti, yes, but Capella had fled the the government building, meaning that announcement Metia was now theirs as well. Upon his arrival, Subaru and Anastasia discussed the demands. Subaru openly admitted Beatrice is the artificial spirit the witch cult asked for, along with an answer to the Tome of Wisdom demand which had puzzled Anastasia to no end. To their surprise, Subaru knew exactly what it was, a prototype of the cult's gospel, the complete version they were based on, but not only that. When asked how he even knew this information, he revealed the witch who made them in the first place told him face to face. In fact, she talked to him, trapped him, deceived him, and just caused him an awful lot of grief. So now, what it seems like to the public is most likely a defected witch cultist. But not just any old member though. To anyone else, Subaru likely seems like a previous Sin Archbishop, or at least a high-ranking member of the cult. On top of all of that, he's even got himself an authority of his own. Admittedly though, that power may not be as widely known. That's one option I can theorize. There's also a witch's previous accomplice, devout follower, or even a student, as Roswell was. Following that, the pastel-haired individual was yet again blown away by Subaru's knightly resolve to not sacrifice even a minority of people. To Subaru, nobody should become a casualty. As Amelia's knight, he can't let that happen. He and everyone else protecting the city need to be the most greedy knights they can be. And after that, Subaru Natsuki made the declaration that he would take down every single one of those dirty cultists and win. Later on, Al waltzed in with a message of what Amelia's been up to in her captivity, soon followed by Garfield barging in to hug his boss in tears, who was elated to see him safe. To reawaken the hope of the city from Wrath's grasp, the five went back and forth on who to elect to actually make the speech, and after a good few minutes, the room looked at Subaru in anticipation. After all, he's the only one with enough passion, confidence, and past victories against the cult to cut it. The only other closest person who could fit that description would be Reinhardt of all people. But he's off with Felt and Otto dealing with a meddling Heinkel. Witnessing Garfield's confidence in him and Anastasia's approval of him forced our boy to realize how people genuinely see Amelia's knight, Subaru Natsuki, and Al would warn him of the heights he was about to reach, the risks of going through with this speech, those of becoming the sole carrier of everyone's expectations and hopes, the hero who strives to fight for the future, and the one who shoulders their burdens. That is who Subaru Natsuki was about to become, and you better believe he took that risk, because for him, this was just business as usual. And so Subaru became this city's hero, and ignited the flames of hope in all of them with a wonderful speech, filled with cockiness yet also humility, confidence yet also nervousness, and above all, hope. Hope that every Priestalin civilian can make it out of this nightmare alive, since they've got a hero on their side. But above even that, they've got each other. This, along with Liliana's earlier personal shelter visits, thwarted Wrath's authority. Afterwards, Subaru turned around to witness the amazed bunch behind him who had all been listening intently, all thankful to know Subaru was the correct choice. Here, Ricardo would share even more surprise as the guy who seduces ladies, little girls, and even ground dragons' reputation preceding him. Thanks, Ricardo! After that, Otto finally arrived with an all-too belated Reinhardt by his side, so the plans to discuss taking back the 4 control towers were begun. Here, Otto revealed he actually took the Tome of Wisdom from the charred remains of the Sanctuary, and secretly brought it to a specialist in Priestella when they first arrived in hopes of restoring it. Yeah, honestly, good call from Otto. I would not trust Roswell, the main villain of Arc 4, just because he got punched a few times and was forced to apologize. This ain't some fairy tale Godjiel shit. This is the guy who sacrificed himself and Subaru in countless timelines just so one version of him could succeed. And it goes way deeper than that. Before anything else though, Cruchet requested to speak with Subaru, who, if you remember, was also poisoned with dragon blood, with much more dripped right onto her body than Natsuki. Just when Subaru and her touched, he was afflicted with a sharp pain, followed by her dragon blood infested areas clearing up a bit. So he continued to bear with that pain until most of the affected areas were cleared, resulting in Subaru's entire right arm filling with the dragon blood before he was stopped by Cruchet. Yet another weird power only Subaru seems to have, because Ferris touched Cruchet earlier and nothing happened. And then after the final meeting was held, the counterattack began. Liliana and Priscilla were up against Wrath, taking down 8 Arms Kurgan and Theresia von Astria's reanimated corpses were Garfield and Wilhelm respectively. Subaru and Reinhardt were on greed duty. By the way, when Subaru raised his hand during the meeting, Reinhardt noted what he'd done and acknowledged that sight must only be a trivial matter to him. And even something nothing else, Subaru ever so casually noted he'll cover for Reinhardt's faults against Regulus. The man who many view as infallible is of course capable of making mistakes. Yet another main reason why Subaru is appreciated by so many of these high prestigious knights. He just treats them like any other person. Of course they have faults. Roy's foe was a soul Ricardo, dealing with Lai was Otto felt dumb and dumbest, and the one protecting their HQ from lust was Aldebaran. Back to shadowing Subaru, the two barged in just in time to rescue Emilia, who had just badmouthed Regulus's entire being, followed quickly by Sue and Rhine bickering while a covered in door, utterly disrespected Sin Archbishop lay on the ground in a rage. Before any time at all, the process of elimination plan to figure out Greed's weakness was underway. Upon exhausting the alphabet all the way from plans A to K, Subaru finally figured it out and announced to Regulus as confident as ever, his trick is stopping time within his own body. Not only that, Subaru discerned every one of the archbishops were named after stars from Earth, which led him to that correct conclusion. Regulus was dumbfounded. Even more so when Subaru began spouting out the secret to how the power worked as well. It all came down to his brides. He attached his heart to one of them, and the only way to make Regulus vulnerable again is by stopping the hearts of the women over and over and over until they're all dead. Well, that would be the case. But Emilia's got experience with cryogenic sleep, also known as stopping the heart without actually killing them. Unfortunately, Emilia also possessed a piece of Regulus inside her. Ironically, Regulus spoke aloud and noted Subaru reminded him of Betelgeuse, granting Subaru the brilliant idea to eliminate the parasite attached to her heart with unseen hand. Also, when Subaru did use his authority, Emilia acknowledged Geuse as part of Subaru now, an answer she'd been wondering ever since he was taken from her all those years ago. I suppose Emilia and Subaru never really did talk about her trial or the identity of who he killed in that carriage a year ago. But in any case, with that action being taken, Regulus Corneus was finally vulnerable again. And at last, after 53 beatings from Emilia, Reinhard von Astria returned from the fucking moon. Did I mention he was sent to the moon? I don't think I did. But he's back now anyway. He pulled a friggin' Saitama. The Royal Knight of Lugunica finished off the Little King. In his final breaths, he realized who exactly Emilia is. That 4-year-old girl whose life he tore apart all those years ago, wailing away his undeniably vain final thoughts. Meanwhile, Emilia ironically couldn't seem to place who exactly Regulus even was. While that was happening, Garfield finished this fight off with 8 Arms Kurgan, and at last dispelled the ghost of inferiority in the form of Elsa that's been haunting him ever since entering Freestella. Wilhelm finally put Teresia to rest, Sirius was beaten and captured by Priscilla and Liliana, Al took care of Capella until he bought enough time for Reinhard to sweep in and save those 3, Otto, Felt, and a recently reawoken Betty took down Lai. But before they could get the kill, Rui, the 3rd sibling of the Gluttony trio, emerged to save him. But besides that, nothing else was done by the witch cult, and they retreated. Subaru and everyone else had done it, freeing the Watergate city of Freestella from the grasp of evil. Everyone eventually met back up for their post-battle reunions, and Subaru, Betty, and Emilia visited Sirius for some answers, but to no avail. What do you know, psychos are still psycho, so not much beyond her love for Betelgeuse/Subaru was said. Oh, and also she gave some warning of the Gluttony siblings. Outside of her cell, Al brought up how a lot of the freak cultists they meet seem to like Subaru quite a bit, but then suddenly Bayako huffed off past the night denouncing Al. Apparently, he'd somehow gotten his hands on Kiritaka's magic crystal in the chaos, and that's how she was able to reawaken in the first place, which Betty deemed a little too shady for her liking. Safe to say she don't trust Al too much. Soon after, Reinhard and Felt agreed to escort Wrath to the capital to be held prisoner by the knights, and Emilia volunteered to encase the humans turned fly/dragon in ice and put them to sleep until they could figure out how to return their humanity. As they were listening to Liliana's ballad, Reinhard took honor having helped his friend Subaru against Greed. Unfortunately, they were never able to bring Puck back since Betty used all the magic crystals in the fight against Gluttony. But if I'm understanding things correctly, Kiritaka is gonna get them a new one as a favor in due time. It's almost time for Bumpy again. Yeah! And finally, as Subaru was making his round after their victory, after talking with Ricardo of course, he spotted someone standing alone off to the side, looking rather down. So then, Subaru approached a man he called Julius, with a weird sense of familiarity. This man, dressed in a Lugunica knight uniform who nobody seemed to recognize besides Subaru, left Emilia and presumably Ricardo stunned and quite confused. Even when talking to Emilia, he treated her as if she somehow knows who this choked up presumed friend of Subaru is. Her puzzled reaction turned his expression into that of dread for some unclear reason. And that's it. Subaru needs to take his meds again. Alright, and that's it. Thank you guys for watching another episode of The Memory of ReZero's World. Thank you so much for Weeb Complex for thinking of that name. And also, for this video's title, The Nameless Knight, thank you for Schwartz Natsumi. I think I'm getting that right. Schwartz Natsumi for thinking of the title of this video. Because I didn't want to do the gluttony cut. Because if I get another one later down the line, that's also going to be the gluttony cut, and it's going to get a little confusing. So I want them to be separate names like this, and that's perfect. Thank you so much. Anyway, guys, like this video if you liked it. Dislike it if you disliked it. Comment any thoughts on things you think I missed or things you think I should have included. And just gush about ReZero down there. I really don't care. And with that being said, have a fantastic day and stay trash. Peace.